When Neo was first revealed, the community immediately labeled it a Souls clone. While the similarities are certainly there, the Last Chance trial showed me that Neo has a lot more to offer than just cloning Dark Souls. Hey guys, JV here with Level Up Gaming, sharing my thoughts on the final Neo beta before launch. I wasn't super interested before this trial, but now I'm confident that I'll be playing the game when it releases in just 2 weeks. For those that may not be familiar, let's talk about what Neo is. So this is an action RPG from Team Ninja, the studio behind the Ninja Gaiden series and the Dead or Alive series. It's safe to say that the people behind this game have a ton of experience with the action and fighting genres. Ninja Gaiden obviously is renowned for its bloody, brutal action combat, and they essentially bring that over to Neo. And the big inspiration, obviously, for Neo, what we're going to talk about throughout this video, is the Souls series from Software. There are a lot of elements that are borrowed and innovated on even further, so we'll take a look at all of that. But in terms of Neo, the game is set in Civil War Japan in the 1600s, and you control William Adams, who is a real Western samurai, the first Western samurai. So very interesting kind of lore going on there, and the story revolves around him and how he interacts with the Civil War. As William, you are fighting a lot of human enemies, other samurai, but the real threat are these supernatural beings who have kind of descended on the world called the yokai. Throughout the trial, I've fought a variety of human enemies and yokai, and it's really interesting because you have to approach them differently. The yokai have an ability which essentially saps your stamina, and you're not able to perform as many moves. You have to be a lot more careful, and that's definitely a bit of an adjustment when you first hop into the game. Let's go ahead and dive into the similarities and differences with the Souls games, because again, this game is directly inspired by the Souls series. They are very upfront about that, and you can tell. If you've ever played a Souls game before, then the first thing you'll notice when you see gameplay of Neo is the UI. It is strikingly similar. In the top left, you've got your health bar, you've got a stamina bar, and kind of a special ability, we'll call it for right now. Bottom left, you've got consumables that can be hotkeyed. In the bottom right, you've got the number of experience points that you have that you can go and cash in whenever that is available. And so those three elements just alone are very, very similar. And while we're talking about the UI, we've got a stamina bar, which is used up after every single action that you take in the game, and that's called ki. So that's essentially your stamina. It works in almost the same way. You can replenish it quicker in Neo, so that's a difference, but the general idea is the same. We have this resource that we have to manage as we make every single move. Like we said, this is an action RPG, and every single enemy is a threat. They can kill you, and so the unforgiving combat of Neo is similar to the Souls series as well. You have to approach enemies kind of with an open mind, figure out their moveset, and then react accordingly. Also similar to the Souls series is the weapon variety. You've got a lot of different classes of weapons that you can play around with: swords, spears, hammers, axes, quicker weapons. I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but they have their own movesets that you have to learn, and they're effective against certain enemies, not as effective against others. That's a whole thing that you have to learn while you're playing this game. That is very similar. Another big element that was borrowed is the shrine system. So these are checkpoints, just like bonfires in the Souls series. You go to these, you pray, this will reset the enemies in the area. You can go up and level your character. You can change your guardian spirit, which is obviously not exactly from the Souls series, but you can manage a lot about your character here. If you're in trouble and you need to despawn all the enemies in the area and respawn them again, just run up to a shrine, pray, and that'll happen. Every enemy that you defeat, and also kind of just dead bodies that you can just collect stuff off of, will give you Amrita, and that is what's tracked in the bottom right corner. That's what you can go to a shrine with and level up your character to get even higher, and it's got its own set of RPG stats. You've got like body, mind, stamina, skill, you know, stuff like that that's very similar to the Souls series, but it's got its own kind of flavor. If you happen to die with Amrita on your character and you don't go and collect your grave before you die the next time, then you lose all of those experience points and you can't spend them. So once again, very similar in that respect. Of course, Neo has its own boss encounters. You'll walk through a door, see a small cutscene, and then have to fight a boss, which, you know, the first few times you're definitely going to die to, but then you learn how it works, you learn the mechanics, and then slowly you get to a point where you can defeat that boss. You also have the ability to summon friendly players if you have the right item, and I believe you can summon AI as well to help you. I'm not 100% on that. You can't leave little messages as far as I know for other players, but you can actually spawn enemies that killed other players in the area, and you get some really awesome loot if you're able to defeat them. Now let's head into the ways that Nioh is different, and the big thing for me is the quick combat. It's a lot more like Bloodborne. If you played Bloodborne, then that has quicker combat than the traditional Souls trilogy series, whatever you want to call it. The combat in Nioh is very quick. It is, snappy. You can dodge around, you can block, and it feels more fluid than the Souls series. A lot of the combat in Nioh revolves around stances. You've got a high stance, a mid stance, and a low stance that all have their different bonuses. I know that some of the Souls games do have stances, but Nioh seems to emphasize it a lot more. That is a core element, and certain enemies will, you'll need to use a certain stance against them in order to succeed. That's something you just have to learn while you're playing the game, and it brings about a lot of variety in the gameplay, and you can actually switch stances mid-combat, and that can give you an edge. You can perform certain moves if you do that, and so it's a really interesting system. There's a lot more depth than what I was able to figure out while I was playing, but it's something I definitely plan on working on when the game comes out. Nioh also has move sets that you can actually distribute points into to learn new abilities that are locked otherwise. So if you decide to use a certain weapon, for example, the sword, then you'll get samurai points that you can distribute in the sword category to unlock more movesets, and each individual weapon class has its own set of movesets. For example, if I want to get better with hammers, I need to use that hammer, earn those points, and then distribute those points in that moveset in order to unlock more moves. And so it's a system that makes sense, and I actually didn't know it was there until I was done playing the game, and once I figured things out, I hopped back in and played around with the new moves, and there is a skill progression there, which is very cool. Nioh is also very loot heavy, more so than the Souls series, at least from what I remember. There's loot rarities and tiers, and a lot of things will drop from most enemies that you encounter, and most kind of dead bodies where you can just absorb whatever items is on that body. And there's a lot of going into the inventory screen, messing around with that stuff, seeing what works, what doesn't, a lot of resistances and RPG heavy stuff that you'll have to deal with. The game also runs really well on my PlayStation 4. It's so smooth. There's two different modes you can play it in. You can play it in 1080p 30 FPS, or what I prefer, which is a little below, is probably like 900p and 60 FPS. It's so smooth. It runs well. There's no hitch ups. There's no anything in the beta where it's like, oh, this is a terrible area that I just have to avoid. I know this isn't the full game, but Dark Souls is notorious for not running very well on consoles. I'm just crossing my fingers that Nioh doesn't have those same issues that plague Dark Souls when it actually comes out. The final big difference for me, and something I really appreciate, is that a lot of things are explained in Nioh. I don't have to wander around aimlessly and wonder what I need to be doing at this moment in time. Where am I going, and what is the objective? There's less obscurity. There's a mini map in the top right corner that gives you a little icon where okay, that's my objective. That's where I need to go. And another thing is that there's not an open world. There's a finite mission structure where you click on a mission, enter that world, and go from start to finish. That's a big difference. But there's just overall less obscurity. I'm not wondering what the hell am I doing, and that's something that I think a lot of Souls fans appreciate about those games. For me, that's kind of a burden. I want to know what I'm doing at all times. I want to know what the objective is, and on and on. Nioh seems to always give you an objective. There's a clear mission, and you go from start to finish. I know the majority of this video has been a comparison between Dark Souls and Nioh, but I want to talk about just Nioh on its own for a second and what makes it unique, what I appreciate about it. First off, I really like the aesthetic of the game. The text, the font, the presentation style of Nioh is interesting, and it kind of plays into the setting and the lore of Japan. It's not something that I know a lot about, so I want to learn more about it. The main mission, the portion that I did play in the Last Chance trial, was not too difficult as to make me shy away from the game and just quit. I know Dark Souls is famous for that, for having these ridiculous characters, bosses that you have to go through, or brutal routes from getting to a bonfire to a boss that you have to just deal with. I didn't encounter anything like that in Nioh that made me want to just put the game down. The boss took me about 10 tries to get to, and I think that's just because I'm not that great at these types of games, but it wasn't too difficult to make me put the game down. I found the loot to be a big reason why I wanted to defeat the boss, because once I finally defeated the Ogress, whatever you want to call her, in the demo, in the main mission, I got some great loot. I got some purple items, which are the rarest as far as I can tell. There's probably some super rare items, but I got some great stuff, and it made me want to be like, okay, I want to play more of this game. So loot is a big incentive that I really appreciate in Nioh. And then finally, we already touched on this, the lack of obscurity is such a big plus. I always know what I'm doing. There's a finite beginning and end to every mission, and that's what I appreciate as well. I think you could tell that Nioh is a game I'm going to pick up and definitely share on the channel. I'm going to have a playtest video, kind of my first impressions, and then hopefully some tips and tricks. I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to be a big expert on this game, but hopefully this is something I get into and share with you guys more. I'd love to hear what you all are thinking about this game, and whether you played the demo or not. What are your thoughts on Nioh? Is this a game you're interested in? Are you going to pick it up or skip it? Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section below. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for constant updates on when we're uploading new content. Check out our website at levelupgmg.com, where you'll find complete libraries of every single video we upload moving into the future. Also, if you're feeling generous, consider supporting us further through our Patreon. Becoming a patron allows you to engage with us directly and unlock exclusive content like monthly Q&A videos. So visit our Patreon if you'd like to learn more. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and click subscribe if you haven't already for more tips and tricks and gaming related videos. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Level Up Gaming.